Welcome to the Teachers Talkin' podcast, hosted by Dustin and Ghazali Abdul Wahab. In this podcast, we discuss all things education and teaching, from innovative teaching methods to challenges to strategies and much, much more. In this discussion or roundtable-based podcast, we bring in educators from all around the world to talk about a variety of education topics so that we can support as many teachers as possible. We want this to be a place of inspiration, personal and professional development, and simply a place where we can elevate education together. Welcome to Teachers Talkin'. Hey everybody, welcome to this episode 12 of Teachers Talkin'. I am Dustin, as always, here with my co-host Ghazali, and we are absolutely thrilled to bring on my former principal and mentor, Dean Marolla. This episode is called Leading from the Frontlines, the Art of School Leadership, and we will focus on an overarching question of how can school leaders effectively navigate the challenges and the opportunities in education to help foster a culture of growth and success. But before we get started with our conversation, Dean, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and your background in education, including, roles that you've held, places you've worked?
Cool. No problem. Thanks, Dustin. It's great to see you guys. I actually started teaching way back in 1985. I taught the 1985-86 school year in New York City without having ever taken an education class at all. I was just fresh out of college. I was at an alternative high school. I had a student that was actually a year younger than me in class. But anyway, I knew after that year that I needed to, I needed some more training to make this thing work right, So I went back to school, started working on a master's degree in education, and started subbing. I realized that the area I was in, things wouldn't go well. I wasn't going to get a job there. So I decided to relocate to Southern California. That was 1990. I began from 90 to 98. I taught middle school math. In 92, I joined Long Beach Unified School District, and I worked with them till 2007. Again, I served as an educator from the middle school math teacher from 92 to 98. From 98 to 2001, I was an assistant principal at middle school. For the 3 years after that, I was assistant principal at a K-8. 3 years after that, I was assistant principal at a high school. And I was after my 15th year with Long Beach Unified. I decided it was time to leave, that I didn't fit their mold very well. And I found myself attracted to charter schools. I was hired by the second charter school that interviewed me, and it completely changed my life, going into a charter organization where I was able to do what I needed to do for the kids. I founded the organization's 5th high school. I was hired July 1st, and they told me that I had to open the Tuesday after Labor Day, that I needed 140 students, and I needed to hire 6 teachers and the principal or counselor. I was like, okay, I guess it's time to get to work. Anyway, for the next 8 years, I was principal of high school number 5. We finally got a name a year before I left. Naming rights, like stadiums, they went for $1 million. You get $1 million, we'll slap your name on a school. Anyway, then I spent the next 3 years at a second high school with the same organization. It had been open 3 years earlier before I got there. The principal was a nightmare. You came with me then. You left number 5 with me and joined me at Smith, and
Yep.
We had our work cut out for us. And by the time that we both left, the gentleman who was the strongest union leader decided that he was going to move into administration. So I think over those 3 years, they saw something different in us, and that we were able to do things a little bit different and a little bit better than most schools. So, and after that, I took a job as executive director, executive director of educational services in Stockton Unified School District, which is in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of California. This is my first. I was supervising 6 directors who supervised the 54 principals. It was my first position outside of a school site, and I hated it. I did it for a year, and I decided I needed to be back in the school site. I was tired of sitting in meetings with adults all day, talking in circles and not getting any place. So I left. I moved to the East Bay, took a position at a charter school there. Things didn't work out. COVID hit. Post-COVID, I taught in these little boxes like we're in now. I taught in them for a year because I didn't want to move into administration. And then my last year, I taught high school math in Palm Springs, California, which was quite interesting. Yeah, quite interesting. And I retired. Yeah, it was. You know what? After being in education and being in a leadership position and seeing what I saw there, I realized why I had left traditional schools 15 years, 20 years before that. So I retired in last June, and I've been enjoying life since then.
Oh, that sounds awesome, Dean. You mentioned that you hired Dustin. So I think our listeners would love to know what you see in him to hire him. Yeah.
You know what? I skipped over that part, and I'm sorry. I talked about him coming to Smith Tech with me, but I didn't talk about me hiring him. I hired Dustin the third year that my school was open. That was my freshmen became sophomores, and now they became juniors. So I needed an 11th grade English teacher. I interviewed Dustin, and he had this remarkable energy that I hadn't seen in other candidates, and he had a different mentality coming from Illinois. He had a different take on things, and I was able to see and hear the passion in his voice about what he was doing and what he wanted to do with the kids. And yeah, and that was it. He became a star teacher. He worked as a English department head. He moved into administration. He was a director of instruction for me before he earned his administrative credential, and then he became one of my assistant principals. And yeah, and then he left California like me.
Before this, I spoke to Dustin a little bit. He told me about your background, and he credited you for a lot of things and the way that he is now in his leadership roles. So now I'm hearing that when you chose him, his credentials didn't matter as much as his passion. So is
Not
that
at
how
all.
you choose your people?
Yeah.
You choose them because of what
His credential did not matter as much. I was able to see the passion in his eyes. And I just did that. That's my interview process. I went with my gut feeling and what I could see rather than the piece of paper or where the piece of paper came from. That didn't matter to me. It was what I saw in the person and what I saw in their eyes. And Dustin has sat in with me on plenty of interviews, and we had a strange interviewing technique, but 9 times out of 10, it worked well for us, and we were on target.
you always got the man, you always never made a mistake.
Did I ever make a mistake? Oh yeah, yeah, of course. Remember that English teacher? The English teacher we hired before. You know who I'm talking about. She lasted what, 3 days? 3 days. she said all the right things and she seemed to have the passion, but again, I was dead wrong. I was dead wrong on her. Yeah, so no, it happens.
Yeah, it does happen.
But the biggest thing, in the charter world, we were able to remedy that very, very quickly, whereas in a traditional system, it doesn't. If you make a bad hiring decision, you're stuck with it for a while. In charter organizations, we were able to find alternate means to get rid of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, I can, when I look back on the organization that we worked for, there were 3 branches. Most early the administrators came from 3 branches, and I was one of those branches. And from my branch of the tree, I think, I don't know if I want to say 5, 6 assistant principals, 3 or 4 principals. After that, one is working as a principal supervisor right now. So there was a lot of the interview process worked more than it didn't.
Yep. I mean,
So,
people stayed because of culture. So people stayed and people grew. Some of those people grew into just phenomenal teachers, while other people grew into phenomenal leaders. Like,
exactly.
Hard stop. That's just what happened. We were like a factory for creating high quality educators and educational leaders.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the branches are still sprouting leaves out there, some of them have gone to traditional districts. A few of them have earned blue ribbon status, and California Distinguished Schools, and they got their start with us. I can't say with me. It wasn't just me. It was more. It was more than me. It was the environment. It was the culture. It was the day-to-day working, and the day-to-day commitment with each other, and looking out for each other and supporting each other along the way.
Yep.
So, in your role, as a school leader, I'm sure when you started your school, you have this clear vision of what you see as the ideal school. How do you communicate this with your staff? How do you ensure that the environment promotes this? And how do you make sure that everybody's in alignment and going in the same direction as you?
I never sugarcoated anything. I wanted to create a school like I wish I had went to when I was in high school. I'm a gay man, and it took me a while to come out, and high school was not fun. And I wanted to create an environment where students and staff can be who they are without having to hide behind, oh, I have a wife, I have all that kind of stuff. So when we recruited students, we told them who we were, and we told them what our expectations were. And when we hired staff, it was the same thing. I never hired anybody alone. I always did it in group interviews, and we discussed it, and it was basically a group decision. Of course, I had the final say, but 9 times out of 10, it was a group decision. And that led to the environment that I wanted to have that I never had in high school. Does that make sense?
You muted Ghazali.
Oh, I'm sorry. Where did I cut off?
Ghazali's muted.
Oh,
So,
he's muted.
There he is.
I'm speechless. Because I'm coming from, we have a different system. We send teachers to the school, so there's no like an interview process in that sense, because the new teachers, they just go to the school and then they have to adapt to the environment. So we don't get to cherry pick, people to fit into the environment that we want. Yeah, unless of course it's a midway transfer. But in general, new teachers just come in, they're sent to us by the ministry. So it's nice to be able to pick, it's like a draft. It's like
Oh,
your
exactly. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but that's how traditional districts are. A traditional principal does not have much of a say. They may be able to pick from 2 or 3 candidates, but that's it. They've come in from HR, and HR has weeded them out before, so they're limited on their choices. And 9 times out of 10, they're stuck with someone that's, you know, that they really don't want. And that's the important part. I always believe that if I had happy teachers in my school and they enjoyed coming to work every day, then I would have happy students. And if I had happy students and I had happy teachers, that meant that learning will take place.
awesome.
I think too that it's the culture is what's important. And even when you're a leader who gets stuck with, these are my only choices of who to hire, and maybe they aren't the choices that I would necessarily go with, it still then comes down to that leader to create that type of culture in order for everybody to, right? Like whether you wanted that person or not, even if you feel stuck with them, right? Like you still have to foster the culture in which you bring apart that inclusion, right?
Exactly. And that's what we encountered when we went on to our second school.
Mm-hmm.
With the charter organization. Half the people were on board, were willing, ready, willing, and able, and the other half, no matter what we did, well, they saw what we wanted and what we stood for, but I don't know if they didn't believe it or what, but by the end of that first year that we were there, everybody that was left there was happy.
Mm-hmm.
And most of them that did leave, a few of them that did leave left by choice
Mm-hmm.
because they knew they didn't fit into the environment. And there was only one really that we had to document out.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So
So,
it was really easy. Once we showed them who we were and what we expected from them and our kids,
yep.
most of them are on board. If they were there for the same reason, if they went into the job for the same reason that we went into it, they would buy into it and they would learn to trust us. And that was one of the biggest things was getting that trust from the old guard that we inherited at the second school, getting that trust from them and targeting the key players. I think we got that trust from those key players.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, it was easy. It was easy. It was like we had been doing this together for years. It was the same. It was the same mindset. And a lot of the agreements and a lot of things that we did were made in group decisions, and the teachers and the assistant principals and the counselors, everybody had their say, everybody had their voice. And I think everybody felt that it was okay if they disagreed, if they had a conflict with it, and we could discuss it and talk it out and reach some sort of consensus where, you know, things would be good.
Mm-hmm. So, can you tell us a little bit about maybe some of the specific initiatives or specific practices that you used in order to help build that trust and promote staff morale as well as staff well-being?
Um, you know, uh, And one of the important things for me was to be seen in the classroom, not just by the students, but by the staff. I want to know what was going on in every single one of my classrooms. So I think, you know, a way of doing that was building trust with those teachers, was being in their classroom on a regular basis and not being in there in a punitive or an evaluative way, just being in there and seeing them and seeing their teaching styles and seeing their interaction with the kids. So I really think that that helped build the trust. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. What was the other part of the
Yeah, just
question?
things that you were doing not only to build the trust, but just also morale and
Oh, okay.
being amongst teachers.
Friday happy hours. Friday happy hours went great. One thing that I used to say, and I would say in private with my administrators, if I don't want to drink with you, I don't want to work with you.
I bet Dustin enjoyed that a lot, those Friday happy hours.
Sometimes too much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You mentioned a lot about the purpose as important, giving your staff the purpose, and then they will follow you. But as a leader yourself, your personality, do you have like role models that you learn from? How did you grow as a leader yourself when you were starting out? How do you become a person that like people in Dustin want to follow rather than just listen?
um, you know what? I don't know. I mean, honestly, I I always showed them who I was. I was upfront. There was no. It was always black. I mean, you knew what you were getting into if you came to work for me. You know. So yeah, you knew what you were getting yourself into, and if that didn't fit with you, you didn't want to come along with
Mhm.
us on our journey.
I think that's probably one of the things that we did so differently than other schools where I've been. When it came to hiring people, we were very real about what that journey was going to be. So it wasn't even just about showing who we were and just being ourselves, really unarguably. It was also being very real about how hard the work was, what level our students were
Exactly.
at. Like there was no sugarcoating that this is just this
Yeah.
great grand place to come and work, which is what happens in a lot of school interviews. That it's really just like you should want to work for us is what it feels like when you go into a lot of school interviews instead of like what can somebody contribute and what are they going to get out of that experience and what's that experience going to be like. I think that going in knowing that this was going to be incredibly difficult work, that it was going to be demanding, that it was going to force me to have to be more flexible than I've ever been, spend more time than you generally would, like just being real about those things, it breaks people down. And when people don't want that level of work, they won't jump into it. And then when people do get into it, they're not shocked and surprised that like this is something that I didn't think it was. And I think that's one reason why we always brought in really good people.
Yes, yes, and looking back at my outfit on the how unconventional our interview processes were. If you look back on, you were there with when we hired our 12th grade history teacher.
Mm-hmm.
We came down to two candidates. Um, we had them both come back, and we still could not decide.
Mm-hmm.
So one of us came up with the idea that let's see how they interact with the kids. Only problem was it was the middle of summer, so we couldn't have them teach lessons or come and hang out during lunch because there were no kids there. So what we did instead is we got a group of kids together that like to play basketball, and both of these candidates said they would play basketball. So we let them play basketball with each of the candidates, and then we asked them to decide who do
Yep.
you want as your 12th grade social studies teacher?
Yep.
And the person they picked um, became an assistant principal, became a principal with the organization, and now he's a director with LACO. And he's working on his doctorate, and I don't think he's even 40 yet.
And guy.
And we involved our students in a lot of the decision making process as well. Like they constantly, like when we did do things that were in school, we always put people in front of kids and we always let those kids have voice in what we were doing. And I mean, even even creating our like principal cabinet and getting students involved in having conversations with the admin team. it just,
Mm-hmm.
they were such a huge part, like making students, collaborating with our students was a really huge part of everything that we did. They
Yeah,
were like
I
the
had
focal
a
point.
yeah, I had a group of students that I met with once every, I don't know if it was, I think it was once every 2 weeks. You know, we had a set time once every 2 weeks that we would sit and we would talk, and they would um, give me feedback and let me know what things that they wanted to do. And this was in addition to the student council leadership that I
Mhm.
would meet with. Um, the other group had a little bit of everything in it. It had not just the kids that would go out for student council, it was the kids that were a pain in the ass, you know? And with them, by putting them on it, they felt that they had a voice. And again, 9 times out of 10, it turned them around, you know? It made them buy into school better than they would have if they hadn't had this experience.
Yeah.
I'm sure as a school leader, you face many complex issues and problems. What approaches do successful school leaders take to make informed decisions and solve these complex problems? What do you do?
Um, Solving complex problems, um, I would involve as many people as I could in the decision that had to be made and try to get their feelings and build consensus with them. Because if the decision is not going to affect me, if it's going to affect all of us, I need their input before I make a decision. I can't make a decision for that involves them unless I had their input as what would work best for them or what they think a solution would be to the issue. And I would hear and I would listen to different sides. I would invite different opinions, conflicting opinions, and then I would weigh things out. And then I would sometimes I would talk with other principals and get their input. It's like, what would you do here? You know, so I would take all this stuff, put it together, and make a decision. You know, and when someone came to me with a problem or an issue, it's like, let me think about it and I'll get back to you because I don't want to make a rush decision on something that's going to impact you or the students. Give me 24 hours to think about it, and then we'll decide.
Mhm.
So go home, have a drink, and relax. Tomorrow's another day, and we'll figure it out then.
Yep.
But as a school leader, right, were there times when you didn't have time to consult and to discuss? Sometimes, things happen that you just on the spot have to make a call. Uh, can you tell us any incidents like that?
I always try to make decisions that were in the best interest of the kids. So that'd be the first and foremost thing. What's going to help this kid the most, or what's going to be most beneficial for this kid? Um, the,
Was there ever a time when you had to choose between a teacher and a student, and how do you make your choice?
ooh, you know what? I wouldn't make a choice at the moment. I would try to diffuse the situation, hear both sides of the story, and then let me get back to it. And again, a lot of times I would have to involve someone else to diffuse the situation, calm them down, and then talk through it and try to figure out who was wrong. And usually, especially with the adults, the teachers, you give them 24 hours to calm down and think about it. They'll figure out why it went sideways.
Mhm.
They'll be able to see whether what contribution they had to make the situation go sideways. Um, so it was more about calming them down and having a cooling off period with them and not making a rapid decision. And also, because if you call, you need to call the parents and inform them about the situation before the kid goes home and tells them. And, I would tell the parents the same thing. I'm gathering all the information from all the sides, from people involved, from witnesses, and I'll get back to you within 24 hours of how we're going to proceed with this.
Mhm.
And usually that was enough to calm them down and diffuse the situation and figure out who was right and who was wrong. There were some times where the teachers were totally wrong, and I would support them as much as I could, but behind closed doors, I would let them know that they were wrong. And sometimes it went well, and sometimes it didn't. But I would try to save as much face for them as I could in front of the kid and the parent. So
I think too, consistency in just school expectations. Like we had very clear expectations in our school. You had very clear expectations for what you expected out of staff and students. And that was just across the board. And being consistent with those expectations from one teacher to another teacher and one leader to another leader and just sticking with that, I think that's also what gives that time to be able to diffuse and then gather without having to respond to something in the exact moment and having to make a quick decision in a moment. So that just, when people are used to that, this is just the way that things run, that lends itself to more positive outcomes, or the right outcomes.
Most definitely. Most definitely.
So tell us a little bit about, you've talked a lot about how you built strong relationships with staff in a variety of ways. How did you also build strong relationships and rapport with the broader community and like especially parent involvement in the school?
I would hold when I got to Smith, our second school, I did donuts with Dean. It was like the third Thursday of every month. We would send out flyers, we would send the voice messages to the families, and I would get a room full, probably about 30 parents, sometimes 35, 40 parents, but there was a core there was a core group, and we talked about everything. Of course I couldn't get into personnel issues with them, but we were able to talk honest and openly. They were able to share their feelings and what their expectations were and where they were disappointed in the way things were handled. And a lot of times I agree with them. It goes back to having that staff and that trust with the staff, and the staff, the parent engagement specialist. She was really good and she was excellent at her job, and she knew what parents were real and what parents were, I don't want to say faking it, but which parents understood where their kid was and what their kid is capable of doing, and those who didn't. And she always helped me and was able to help me and point me in the right direction with the parents. And over time, we were able to build that trust. And she repeated every word that I said in Spanish, verbatim. She didn't sugarcoat it, and I didn't want that. I didn't want her to say her interpretation of what I said. Say exactly what I'm saying. And we always had activities at the school where we involved parents. We did a student of the month luncheon. Each teacher was able to select one student to give a student of the month award to. They would get a certificate. They would get a special T-shirt that they could wear anytime instead of their uniform. They would get their name on the bulletin board in front of the school, in front of when you came in the office for student of the month. And we would invite their parents for lunch. And we did that every month. And that just built rapport with everybody, because some of the kids that were selected as student of the month weren't your typical straight A students of the month. You know what I mean? They may have done something spectacular. So you were able to build that relationship, not just with the parents who were supportive, and who knew what their students were capable of, but you were able to build a rapport with those parents that may not have liked you in the first place because of some interaction, but they saw that you and your staff respected and honored their child, so they were much more open to uh, an agreeable relationship with you. What else did we do for parents, Dustin?
You know, the thing that always sticks out to me was report card pickups. When we made a shift from just basically report card pickups to making that an
I
event.
forget that.
Yeah.
Yes. And we did it every 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Every 6 weeks or every 8 weeks. Was it 6 weeks or 8 weeks? It was 6 weeks. Every 6 weeks they got a progress report, and we would invite parents to come. We wouldn't give it to the kids. The parents had to come and get it, and we served dinner for them, so they could bring the rest of their kids and not have to worry about cooking dinner, and they could go pick up their report card and go talk to any of the kids' teachers. And we did that once every 6 weeks. So, before the kid failed at the semester, parents had 3 opportunities, right? Yeah, 3 opportunities to talk with the teacher and try to get it right. So it was very, very transparent. Yes. Thank you for remembering that.
Yeah,
I
no, I
forgot
mean,
about that.
because I loved those dinners because we had specific time that was set up. Like we're serving dinner all night, but like from from like 5 to 5:30, it was actually sort of like dinner time, and the teachers would go out and we would go sit with families and have dinner with families. It was incredible. And then involving students as well throughout that process, like that's where we would display a bunch of artwork, or like you'd turn a corner and a student rock band would be playing in the corner of the second floor of the building. Like we did so many ways that we were promoting the value of our students and the great things that our students were doing and making it this like really family oriented atmosphere. So it didn't feel like a report card pickup or a parent teacher conference.
Didn't we also, speaking of the kids, involving the kids, didn't we have each teacher pick a student ambassador every period? That if a stranger or someone they didn't know walked into the classroom, instead of disrupting the teacher, they would immediately go to the visitor and introduce themselves and tell them about what's going on in class, right?
Yep. And we talked about that with Kip a few episodes ago.
Oh, really? Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And what we did is we turned the teacher expectations back over to the kids, so the kids knew what they should expect from their teacher, right?
Yeah.
So this idea of report card pickups, it sounds like really interesting. It sounds like you use the data that you get from your assessments, and then you share it with parents in a timely fashion. So how do you leverage on data and technology to drive improvement and innovation in your school? That's question number one. Question number two is, you just retired. You retired at a time when the educational landscape is changing very quickly, especially with the advent of AI, ChatGPT and whatnot. What's your take on this change in the educational landscape that's ongoing right now?
Okay, I'll answer question 2 first. Nothing can replace a live teacher in the classroom.
Sure.
We tried during COVID with the little Zoom boxes, and it didn't work. Nothing can replace the teacher. So I don't think, as wonderful as the computer program is, or as much as the AI can do, I just don't think it's going to ever take the place of that real live teacher with that connection that the kid can build. Now, as far as data, we were very, very data conscious. We reviewed teachers' gradebooks on a regular basis. Teachers knew that, and if we saw something that wasn't quite right, we would talk to them about it. So that was ongoing data. We had access to the grades that they put in, and we required that they put in, was it a grade a week or 2 grades a week, Dustin?
Yeah, grade a week.
Yeah, a grade a week. And if there wasn't a grade a week put in, we would ask them why. And then if we saw it 2 weeks in a row, then maybe we would send out an email and put it in writing and CC the boss, what's going on? How can I help you? That kind of stuff. So there was that expectation that the data needs to be there and we're going to review it. We gave benchmarks every quarter, I think, in most of the subjects. And after the benchmark, we review the data, we would analyze it. And of course, we would look at the strengths, the areas that we did great in, but we would also look for 3 areas that we could improve on and work towards that for the next until the next benchmark, make up for that. How can we reteach these standards so that when the kids see them on the next benchmark, they'll do better on it. So we were very, very data driven. And we had, this was towards the end of our reign there. I say reign. New CEO, new things happen, anyway.
This
We had data meetings. We had data meetings with the teachers, and we would analyze whether it was an exam, whether it was a quiz that they gave the kids, and the kids' performance, and what the teacher was going to do about it. What do we do those data meetings every 2 weeks, Dustin?
It was like, within our coaching cycles. So for most people, I think it was biweekly, and for some people it was like weekly. We did them also in just like department time and grade level time meetings. So we did those data dives all the time, like in such a variety of ways too. So because sometimes we were even just trying to, like, we would do like a what's the words I'm looking for? We would try to coordinate on our grading. So like there'd be times where we would get together and we would have like 3 essays, for example, and everybody would grade the 3 essays. Then we would collaborate and see how, or calibrate. That's what I'm looking for. We would calibrate grading so that we could see if we were all grading the same way, using a rubric in the same fashion, et cetera, et cetera. So like there was it goes back to that idea of like being consistent with our expectations. We were just very, very consistent in every endeavor that we took on, right? And like when we had a priority, it was the priority until it was done right and done consistently right. And then we would move on to our next priority. Like we were never a school where we had multiple priorities going on at once, because then we weren't doing anything well. We were very, very organized and prioritized with what we wanted to accomplish.
Focus schools. Yep. Yeah. No, you're right. We were very focused. And the teachers knew that, you're going to have days where you're going to have a little work. There are days you're going to have a lot of work, so they knew that they were getting into this cycle where it was busy, and it was the expectation. I would send out at the end of the day, I would do my evening email. Not that I expect teachers to read it at night, but of course they do, because most teachers are neurotic like that. But the expectation is that they read it in the morning, and I would highlight things that happened that day, and then there was always my Sunday email, which outlined what was going on, the major events for the week, and then the calendar for the next 2 weeks. So it was always first and foremost. And the thing was with me, if it's not on the calendar, it's not happening. So we had to make sure that everybody got the calendar stuff into me before I sent out the email, or else it ain't gonna happen. So and that kind of communication, I think, is extremely important with staff, and extremely important with building trust, because you're being very transparent about what you're doing. If I wasn't going to be in until 10 o'clock that morning, I would say, Dean, out until 10 a.m., or sometimes I would say, Dean, a chiropractor, but they knew where I was at all times, and they knew who to go to if I wasn't there. And they had no excuse not to know it, because it was there in the email. I mean, it probably took me an hour and a half to gather all the information and compose it right and send it out on a Sunday to the staff. But it was definitely, I think it was definitely worth it. And I think it built a great community that we had
Yeah,
back
I mean,
then.
Yeah.
I've been at places where there's very little communication in that way. And even somebody may send out an email, a weekly email, but something may get missed. And the next thing you know, we have a field trip happening in the middle of the week that nobody knew about. And you find out about it first thing in the morning on a Wednesday, like, and it throws off all your plans and everything, right? Like and it doesn't, and when at places where that happens, it happens regularly. And that
Yes.
absolutely diminishes the trust in the leadership, like, because it feels like there's a lack of transparency. It feels like there's a lack of communication. It feels like there's a lack of organization, right? It hits so many buckets when communication is bad that it can have a tremendous impact on trust, which then has a tremendous impact on culture and teacher well-being then.
Yeah, yeah, very true. Very true. Yeah.
Domino effect.
Yeah, yeah. It makes it look like, with the administration, that the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. And you see that many times. It was always clear that everybody was on the same page.
Yep.
With it. Yeah.
Considering that
Yeah.
both of you mentioned the one important factor of running a school is to prioritize and to pick your priorities. So for Dean, what advice can you give to school leaders who are navigating complexities of priorities? With, like, for example, the implementation of new technologies in their schools, and then the day-to-day firefighting that happens in the school between student and teachers, for example. So and then many things that comes with the expectations of running a school. So what's your advice for school leaders? How do you prioritize when you have so many things coming in at the same time?
How do you prioritize? I mean, student safety, of course, is always first. So if something's going on with student safety that involves the safety of a student, you need to take care of that immediately, no matter what's going on. You always need to go in with a plan of how your day is going to be. And 9 times out of 10, it didn't go that way, and you only accomplished half of what you wanted to, but you were able to do what you needed to do because of those interruptions. You know what I mean? You built that in. If you had downtime and you knew something was due in 2 weeks, you would start working on it because you don't know when the next emergency or the next fire is going to erupt. Teacher observations. If I was going in to observe a lesson, or if any of my assistant principals were going in to observe a lesson, that's sacred time. That person is not available then. If something happened, if there was a fire that needed to be put out, Dustin would take care of it because I was watching that teacher's lesson, because that's a priority. The teacher may have went to extremes. You don't know how nervous or hard they worked on planning it, so they deserve my undivided attention. I can trust one of my assistants to take care of that for me. So it's making sure that time was sacred. It was also making sure that the first half hour before school, last half hour after school, and lunchtime and nutrition time, we were available. We were all available, and we were all seen. Even if we need to have a conversation with the student, we would take that student outside with us or into the multipurpose room or wherever we were being out and about, and have the conversation there instead of being locked up in an office away from the kids.
Yeah, one of the things that was probably said to me more than anything else from kids was, "You're never in your office." And I'm like, I know.
Yeah.
I'm not supposed to be in my office.
I'm not supposed to be in my office. Yeah.
That's why
exactly.
I'm in your classroom.
Yep. Exactly. I'm not supposed to be in the office. You're right. Yeah.
Oh,
You learn well.
I think the other thing is
well.
you can have these priorities, and when you have a team of people that you trust and that you're 100% on the same page with, right? Because you entrusted your assistant principals to make decisions on your behalf, knowing that we knew what decision you would make as well. Like we were just that lock and step with each other all of the time. And that's what really allowed us to be able to, like, Ghazali, something we haven't even talked about was that I would recommend to all leaders out there was that as leaders, we all still taught a class. Dean, as a
Yes.
principal, was still teaching an AP calculus class every other day.
Mhm.
Like I was still teaching an
Oh,
AP literature class every other day. And that
Mhm.
grounded us in all of our decision making because we never ever forgot what it meant to be a teacher in a classroom. It never lets you forget what it means to have to lesson plan, to have to grade essays and tests, to have to, deal with student discipline and behavior management in your classroom. Like you never forget what that means as a leader when you're still doing it, even for a short period of time. And I think because we had such trust in one another, we were able to alternate when we were teaching so that somebody was always available, and we always had trust that no matter what was going on, that person or those people could handle it while the rest of us were doing whatever responsibilities we had. We alternated when we were visiting classrooms, when we were teaching, when we were in meetings. Like we were just like everything was scheduled on top of each other, but it was because we wanted to make sure that somebody was always able to be seen around the school. And I think that makes
Right.
a huge difference when it comes to the culture of a school.
Yeah, there was someone available to take a phone call from an angry parent. There was someone available to meet with an angry teacher. There was always someone available during the period, during the day that they could talk to, that was able to listen to them. Yeah, and I forgot about that. I forgot about teaching the class. That showed. I think that showed something to the students. That we were not just bosses as they see it, or disciplinarians. We were, in fact, still teachers because we were still teaching. And it also buys you credibility with your staff.
Uh-huh.
It buys you so much credibility with your staff that they know that you're doing one period, every other day, just like they are, in addition to whatever else you have to do. Yeah, we did a lot of things right, Dustin.
We did. We did.
we did a lot of things that aren't done in most places. And I think if they were done more often than not, our educational system would be much, much better. I always looked about it as, making a change. And I come to realize that we made little changes. Our impact affected 500 to 600 students and staff, and that was it. But we were able to make that impact on our little place in the world. We weren't going to make a system-wide impact, but in spots, there are still places where some of the things that we did exist because of the branches that have gone off from the tree. But you learn that it's not about, you're not going to make a change system-wide. I always believe that the best thing to do with school districts is to blow them up and start all over again. The bureaucracy, the the separation between management and employees that exist cause more harm to what's going on in the classroom than anything else. So I'll still say it to this day, school districts need to be blown up and grown from the ground again, because you're not going to be able to make a change the whole system. You can make little impacts here and there, like we're able to do, but system wide, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I went to Stockton after I left the organization we worked for. I went to Stockton, thinking that we'd be able to make a great impact, because I was going to work for a leader who I respected and thought, could make that impact. And it just turned out to be the same thing that I experienced when I worked for a traditional school district. There was no way to make a change, and it was ingrained. And that was the school year. That was 1819. Okay. Since 1819, that school district has had 4 superintendents.
Wow.
4 superintendents within 6 years. So
Wow.
you have to be satisfied with the change that you can make within the 4 walls. You know, teachers have an impact within the 4 walls of their classroom. Leadership has an impact within the 4 walls of the school. And that's the only difference that you can hope to make. And like I said, hope to be able to spawn and grow these branches so pieces of what they've seen work continue to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
and because of those branches, there's been impact beyond those 4 walls, but it takes cultivating them to start to make that sort of thing happen. But even then, it's still small. It's still not that system-wide impact that we desperately need that we'll never actually get, you know?
exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Well, this has been an incredible conversation. Thank you so much. Do you have any advice that you would give to other school leaders out there who are listening? Anything that we missed? Any final nuggets that you have?
I would just say be yourself, be real, make the people that surround you know who you are, and let them see the real you so that you can earn their respect and trust.
Thank you.
It's important. Like I said, we go back to, if I have happy teachers, I'll have happy students, and that means there's going to be learning going on. So, and that's the bottom line.
Ghazali, final word
Okay.
from you?
This is really been an engaging. I look at how much the time has flown, nearly 1.5 hours. Yeah, since we started. Yeah. So it's been great talking to you, Dean. I can see why Dustin followed you. You exude that
Thank you.
charismatic quality of a leader, and I think we can hear it in your passion, in your voice. Yeah. So, Dustin,
Thank you.
take it away.
Yeah, thank you so much for having this great conversation with us and for joining us, guests and everybody listening. Thank you for listening in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, review, rate, share this podcast so we can keep hitting as many educators as we possibly can. Our next episode will be out on May 6th. So as always, we appreciate all of the support. Thank you so much. Ghazali, Dean, it's been real. See you guys later.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.